If there's something that is becoming a problem, is this.
But as aid seekers die in queues and churches get bombed, that bet has become riskier. With the war showing no sign of ending soon, millions of Gazans remain caught in between.
Fighting broadly and the state of Israel. On the heels of the Israeli attack on the only Catholic church in Gaza, which killed 3 Christians, injured 10, including the priest. On the heels of that, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who is extremely pro-Israel, Mike Huckabee threatened to accuse Israel of being unwelcoming to Christians because apparently evangelical groups in America were having trouble getting visas. On the heels of all of that, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has called a recent Israeli settler attack on a Palestinian church in the West Bank an act of terror. This was an attack that ended up with the death of a Palestinian American who is apparently a Christian. So this Huckabee actually went to visit the Christian town of Taiba, where Israeli settlers reportedly started a fire near a cemetery in a 5th century church back on July 8th. Huckabee said, "It is an act of terror and it is a crime. Those who carry out acts of terror and violence in Taiba or anywhere should be found and prosecuted, not just reprimanded. That's not enough. A little apology, a little whoopsie-daisy, a little slap on the wrist, not enough, according to the U.S. ambassador to Israel. They need to be prosecuted for their crimes." The Israeli government has not commented on this incident, but has a habit of denouncing these kinds of attacks. Huckabee saying you got to do more than denounce it. You got to go hard against these people. He's asked Israel to, quote, aggressively investigate killing of this Palestinian American who was beaten to death by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Says it's a criminal and terrorist act. What makes this strange, what makes even my commentary on this strange from last week is Huckabee is a big defender of Israel and even of Israeli settlements, according to reporting, and yet he says this is completely outrageous. So I discussed the IDF attack on Friday, I guess it was Thursday or Friday, and I caught a bunch of flack from extremely pro-Israel activists. A bunch of flack. I mean, all the crazy insinuations. You're abandoning Israel. You're anti-Semitic or something. Completely lunatic stuff. And my reaction to that is, if Mike Huckabee and I are the enemies of the state of Israel, then Israel doesn't have any friends. Doesn't have a single friend on planet Earth. And this is a big problem. These 3 incidents, all in rapid succession, pose a big problem for the Israeli government. Because what you hear, the typical talking points in propaganda, if you call out the attack on the church, which the state of Israel says was accidental, maybe it was accidental, maybe it was a mistake, but it was a big mistake. If it was a mistake, it was a big mistake. Actually, either way, you would say it was a big mistake. The Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem doesn't seem totally convinced it was a mistake. The Holy Father has condemned the attack repeatedly and called for peace and an end to the war. The typical response, the talking points is, well, you're condemning an Israeli attack on a church, or you're condemning Israeli settler attacks on a Christian community in the West Bank, but why aren't you talking about the Muslim attacks on Christians? And there are some people who are pathologically opposed to Israel or who don't like the Jews or something, who don't talk about Muslim attacks on Christians. But that ain't me, and that ain't Mike Huckabee, and that ain't a lot of the people who are seriously concerned about these attacks in recent days. I think if I had a nickel for every time on this show that I've mentioned the battles of Poitiers, Lepanto, and Vienna, or any other number of Muslim attacks on Christians going back 1,300 years all the way to the present, if I had a nickel for that, I think I could buy a fleet of private jets. You think Mike Huckabee hasn't called out Islamic terror against Christians? Give me a break. But that doesn't mean that we can't criticize the government of Israel when it is right and just to do so. And furthermore, when sometimes people will say, well, why aren't you talking about, I don't know, a Syrian attack on Christians or even a Russian attack on Christians in Ukraine? I say, first of all, we do talk about these things, but even so, we regularly kill Syrians. We, the United States, we are currently waging a war against Russia, slaughtering the Russian army through our proxy in Ukraine. We regularly light up the Middle East, blow up Muslim extremists who persecute Christians. The difference here is Israel is our ally. We fund Israel. We fund the Israeli military. So it's an apples and oranges comparison. And the United States has every right. The White House reportedly has every right to be furious over the attack on the church, accidental or otherwise. The administration, through its ambassador to Israel, has every right to be furious when a Palestinian American is killed in a Christian community by Israeli settlers. Has every right to do that, especially when we're signing the checks. I don't think that the pro-Israeli side is playing this very well. I was looking at a poll last night, CNN poll, so take it with a grain of salt. But support for the war in Gaza at this point, people who believe the Israeli actions are totally justified, it's like 23%. It's dropped to extreme levels, 10 to 52%, even among Republicans. Republicans used to support the state of Israel 150%. So this is a real problem. I think it's a sign of the times. If you have someone who's broadly supportive of the state of Israel, like me, someone who has, for decades, like Mike Huckabee, been very, very supportive of the state of Israel, if you have the attention of those guys.
His aides are said to be exasperated by Netanyahu's unpredictability, his readiness to bomb first and justify later. The final straw for many came this week when Israeli strikes hit Gaza's only Catholic church. The strikes killed 3 people. Donald Trump ended up calling Netanyahu reportedly frustrated. Even the Vatican has entered the fray. After the church strike, 2 patriarchs from the Catholic and Greek Orthodox churches entered Gaza. They stood in the ruins of the church. The Pope himself has not only condemned the barbarity of the war, he also dialed Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas for the first time since his papacy began. This act, sadly, adds to the ongoing military attacks against the civilian population and places of worship in Gaza. Once again, I call for an immediate end to the barbarity of war. So is this a tipping point in the war? Ceasefire talks remain stalled. The Israeli government seems in no mood to stop. And Netanyahu, increasingly boxed in by his legal troubles and political enemies, has little incentive to de-escalate. If anything, he appears to be gambling, that the world will huff and puff but ultimately let him proceed. So far, that bet is paid off.
People. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, says that there was a threat, but those in the crowd call it carnage. And it comes as Trump's patience is running thin with Israel. Reports suggest the US president is frustrated. His aides have called Prime Minister Netanyahu a madman. The White House wants this war to end, but Netanyahu's relentless strides are pushing it further off the rails. Our next report tells you more.
In Gaza, people no longer queue for aid. They rush at every turn of a flour truck's wheel. And this week, for some Gazans, that gamble ended in death. Israeli forces opened fire on desperate crowds seeking food. 93 people were killed in the gunfire. The Israeli army says it was responding to a threat, but survivors recall a hellish scene. Old men shot off bicycles, children buried under chaos, women screaming over the fallen.
They were hiding behind high barriers. We couldn't see them, but they suddenly emerged and started shooting and shelling us. Women and children were lying dead on the ground. It felt like doomsday. Everyone was trying to save themselves. Children and women were torn apart, still lying there in large numbers.
I saw people dying, lying motionless on the ground. There were no ambulances, and no one could help. The shelling was random, from tanks, warships, and snipers. Gunfire was coming from all directions.
Since October 2023, Gaza has been a theater of devastation. At least 19 people died of hunger on a single day this week. Aid workers report a famine-like situation. Gaza's Ministry of Health warns that hundreds more will die soon. And yet, aid trucks remain stalled just kilometers away. Israel claims security concerns. The UN calls it man-made famine. and stuck in the middle are Gazans, who die just trying to get some aid. So what is Israel's goal in the Strip? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it is ending the Hamas. But to his domestic critics, he is a political survivor using war to cling to power. Many believe he has become a man increasingly difficult to interpret and even harder to control. At the White House, whispers have turned into frustration. Reports say that one White House official said that Bibi is acting like a madman. Another compared him to a child who just won't behave. Even Donald Trump has reportedly lost his patience.
You know, it's funny that most Christians waited for so long. It's funny that most Christian Zionists and most pro-Israel in the US had to wait and for a church to be attacked to complain. My question is very simple. When IDF was throwing bombs indiscriminately in Gaza, the bombs and the bullet could not select who is a Christian, who is not. And this is where the double standard and ethnocentrism is there. That it's okay for an Islam kid to die or a Muslim to die, but it's not okay for a Christian. You have seen some prominent people in America complain about the bombing of Gaza church. But my question is, how many Muslims have died? We have waited for 50,000 people plus to die, and just to complain after 2 people died in a Catholic church. It shows the double standard, and it shows you very well that Israel benefits and only survive in existence of Islamophobia. Israel benefits a lot from Israel's Islamophobia. Why? Because they are able to dehumanize Arabs who they are colonizing. And this is what happens. There's a reason why the attack of the church even made the government itself apologize. And you can see the backlash that we have gotten. Because why? Why is it that Christian life is very important than an Arab life? We need to be very consistent that if we want to be tolerant and to ensure that every religious person is safe and there are no fundamentalists, we must make sure that if we are to complain, let's complain when a Jew is killed, when an Islam is killed, and when a Christian is killed. Not only when a Jew or a Christian is killed, because this shows a double standard that is very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. You don't have to wait for 3 Christians to die. I'm sure there are others who have died during the indiscriminate bombing or indiscriminate shooting in the aid camps. It's not that the people have been started dying just last weekend when the church was bombed. No, these things have been happening for a very long time. And it's not that it started yesterday. We need to ensure that we don't have to speak when a Christian is killed, but we are silent when a Muslim is killed. You know, when you complain that Muslims hate a Christian, I don't think they hate. It's because we are allowing these radical people to control the narrative. When you already complain when a Christian is killed, you are showing Muslims that you hate them. And I've said this, the people, the Zionists, are behind the spread of Islamophobia, because they know with Islamophobia, it's easy to justify and to dehumanize Palestinians as Arabs. And we have seen even some crooks complain that even the Christians are supporting the group they keep complaining that is the one that is the problem in Palestine. It's very sad. What do you think? Do you feel like Christians have waited for so long and it shows a double standard, ethnocentrism, and lack of moral clarity, that we only complain when a Christian dies, but we are okay when a Muslim dies? Let me know in the comment section what you think.